We interrupt your regular schedule of Time Warp Radio to present a specially broadcasted bonus episode. We're discussing our most recent movie minutes with Austin Fresh and Abby Mahler from Sins of the Flesh, LA. Hey guys.
Hello.
Hi guys. So, Sins of the Flesh, you guys are literally iconic in our community. You're at the New Art.
LA Shadowcast. Like, when people come from out of state to, go to Santa Monica for a weekend, and they're like, oh, I think they have a showing of Rocky in LA. They go to your show. Like, people from all over the place come to the New Art.
I can't say I haven't rested on those laurels before. When I went to college on the East Coast, like, sometimes I'd go to other Rocky casts and I'd be like, yeah, I'm on Sins. And they'd be like, oh!
Sins! Oh! Well, I mean, you guys have had, like, a weekly show for at least the last 30 years, so...
Yeah, so actually, now during the pandemic, because I was talking to two of our prior cast leads when I had to make the call in March, where, funnily enough, I said, well, we're going to not do the next two shows, and we'll see where we're at from there, and,
Remember when that was thinking, like, too far ahead?
So, we started at the Landmark New Art, I believe, 1980. It's a couple years after the movie comes out. We start at the Landmark New Art on Sawtelle in Santa Monica. And besides that, there was the weekend the Blair Witch Project came out. The theater kicked us out and didn't show Rocky that night and showed the Blair Witch Project at midnight instead. And there was one weekend the theater was under construction. Those are the only two weekends Sins of the Flesh did not perform.
Oh my god.
Besides now.
And we even performed during Carmageddon, which was,
correct.
Like the 405 was shut down but feet away from our theater, and yet we soldiered on.
People had to take surface streets. It was a nightmare.
Surface streets in LA? Disgusting.
I bet you could hear the entire crowd talking about it the whole night long.
The Trixie that night was themed. Don't you worry.
Yeah, like Brad and Janet got in the car and started driving, and then they were in fact stopped by Caltrans.
Yeah.
So we did a tiny bit of research on the New Art, and it seems like you guys were one of the very first theaters to start showing Rocky Horror on a regular basis, and that was in 76.
Right away, almost right away after the midnight thing picked up.
Yeah, the Landmark has not the Landmark. Landmark is the corporation. The New Art, because it is now a Landmark theater, has it's a very interesting Landmark theater because they've just allowed it to kind of operate as the New Art this entire time that they've been under this. For the last, I think, 20 years now, they've been a Landmark theater. And, yeah, they always, from the get-go, if it was sponsored by a big studio, it wasn't going to play at the New Art.
No, it's, a very classic art house cinema. That's where you'd see a Gaspar Noé movie on any other weekend, or it's very much like the Frida, where Chaos is based. It's got such a good catalog of cult movies and new art house releases. So I love that theater. I love coming to see a Shadowcast there because you can feel the history in the pre-show, in the cast energy, in the people that are working there. This is a place that, oh my gosh, I can't imagine just who has come to see your shows before? Because that's a huge theater too. It like we read it was like it's like 300 seats, right?
Yeah, it's 324 is us being fully sold out at that
Oh my
theater.
gosh.
Yeah, and I believe when it's not Rocky, it is like a 340 seat capacity. We take a few seats for having to change in the aisles and fun stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know at the Frito we're only like 150, so
That is an insane crowd to not only perform to, but like you guys sell out that theater weekly, all the
Yeah.
time.
It's funny because I have guested with you guys after I had gotten used to the layout at Sins. When I came back, it had been like probably a year or so since I had last guested at Chaos, and I totally had to repace running around in certain scenes because I was like so used to like I gotta get all the way down these aisles, and then I was like, you have like 40 feet to go. That's it.
Yeah, half the aisle length for sure.
Yeah.
and then we have that nice little alleyway in the back of the theater where you don't have to push through the doors or anything. We're
Right?
spoiled.
But Sins has a huge stage and a pretty dedicated following.
Oh, have you been on that stage?
Oh yeah,
It's Danger City, man.
it is a nightmare of a stage.
That
It is-
carpeted stage.
Ugh.
It is a carpeted stage. Your heels get stuck in it. There's like good 1/4-inch gaps that are big enough for your heel to get through.
And there's also a gap in the back between the stage and like
Yep.
the screen.
Uh-huh,
So if you go too far back, you will fall off the back
will
of the
fall.
stage.
None of the stairs are connected to the stage, so you can fuck up going up and down too. Sometimes there's a block behind the stage to step up. Sometimes the block's not there.
Yeah, the one time I
And
did fall off the
also-
back, thankfully the block was there. Grateful.
Yes.
Hashtag blessed.
And me personally, so I training to be Columbia when I used to perform at Midnight Insanity in Long Beach. They have a very nice wooden stage, and so I wore actual tap shoes as Columbia, so because I could actually tap and the audience could hear me. And the first time I went to Sins as a guest before I was on cast to perform as Columbia, I completely wiped out sliding on the carpet in those tap shoes because I had no idea.
No.
It,
No.
it was timed well, but
When you guys
sure didn't
said
like that.
carpet, I was thinking about the tap, like how that works.
Well, it's the same.
It doesn't.
Well, not the same, but it's similar
It
at
just
Chaos because we have cement floors, and they're like
Yes.
not just cement, but they're like polished cement. So it
The
is
slickest.
so slick.
Slippery. Yeah.
And I have definitely fallen and eaten shit at Chaos before.
yeah.
But what is that crowd normally like? Like, do you guys have a standard, you'd say, or does it vary from week to week?
It really fluctuates based on the time of year, in my opinion. Like, especially
Yeah.
around the winter time, which, of course, it's my birthday, so that's when it should be sold out, in my opinion. It's usually really empty.
Your birthday shows, of course.
Very disappointing. But in the summertime, it's, every week sold out.
Yeah, I'd say like summertime is like nicely crowded. Most of October we have to turn people away like every show we do in October because Halloween is happening.
Oh my gosh! Can I tell you my favorite Sins memory that I it's like a Sins adjacent memory. I can't say
Yeah.
that it tops the things that I've seen at Sins. But you said you guys have to turn people away all the time. I went one time and Drake Bell showed
Yes.
I may have a photo with Drake Bell from that very evening.
because he hangs out at like any touristy
Yeah.
place and wants to get
Yeah.
noticed. But he literally showed up in full Frankenfurter getup
Oh
with
my god.
2 younger gals in like a Colombian magenta
Oh my
look,
god.
and straight up was like standing on the side of the street smoking a cigarette while the 2 girls were in front of me in line asking why they needed a ticket, and like they didn't know that these things sold out, and like
my God.
don't you see our costumes, like, and we're with Drake Bell, and I was like
Baby, you're a fire hazard. I can't let you in. Like too many.
So yeah, you will turn even Drake Bell away from your show.
The other really fun one that we got kind of recently was there was a night. This was like last September, and Fat Mike, for any of you punks, that is the frontman of NoFX and is also the frontman of Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, which is his like really fun cover band. And Fat Mike was just shorts, Vans, dad hoodie, all black, like chilling in a corner. And like two of our cast members are like hitting each other, like whisper shouting, like, "Hey, I think that's Fat Mike. Go check out if that's Fat Mike." And like half of cast like approaches him all starry-eyed, and he's like, "I don't get recognized in LA anymore. I didn't think and I was like, buddy, if you're gonna get recognized anywhere in LA, it's
gonna
with
be
a bunch
here.
of Rocky kids. Don't you worry, buddy."
Oh man, but like you sometimes have tourists in the crowd.
Oh, yeah.
You sometimes have regulars in the crowd. Like, are people usually super receptive in your audience? Are they
Yeah, so it's interesting. Of like, I've noticed it is one of the younger skewing crowds of the casts that I have been a part of or guested with.
Uh-huh.
It is a lot more a strong band of high school kids versus like a lot of other Rocky crowds I perform for is more definitely like young adults can't really go to a bar yet age
Yeah.
range.
Okay. For
Yes.
sure? Yeah.
And I'd say 85 to 95% of people who are there are really, really, really into it. And the other people who don't have a good time either don't know what they're signing up for, pretty much, or show up being entitled because of a Rocky Horror that they have a mixed memory of. Like drunk moms who went once in the 80s show up for their 50th birthday
Oh, and they
are
bring
like
all
so
their
upset
kids
that
who
we're
are
not
all
dancing with them
virgins.
all
It's
night.
like their daughter and like her, like
Yeah.
10 of her daughter's friends who are all virgins, and the mom is like, "You don't even know. I saw this when I was your age. You're gonna have a blast." And then she gets
Yeah.
too drunk, and then they all take her home.
And yeah, she gets too drunk, the mom throws up, and then like my security has to go say like, "Ma'am, you gotta go." Like, you're now a
Please.
problem.
That's great though. That's like, man. Yeah. So we started the conversation, introduced you guys, but to get a little bit more clarity on your voices and who's who, Austin, if you could say hi.
Hi.
And can you tell us what you do on Sins of the Flesh? What would you say your role on cast is?
Yeah, for sure. I am one of the two elected cast leads. The dynamic that my other cast lead and I have developed, I have now been labeled as cast dad. She has been labeled as cast mom. It's very fun. Yeah, I've been doing Rocky for like 6 years, and then when I came to Sins of the Flesh, a couple months in, one of the cast leads was stepping down, and I had the gremlin thought in the back of my head for the last couple years of like, I think I can do this. I think this is a job I can do, and
Yeah.
I've now been doing it for like almost 2 years.
Well, I've known you since you joined the Rocky community. I remember you joining Midnight
Yeah.
Insanity way back in the day.
Yeah.
And honestly, you have such drive, and I couldn't think of anybody better for that role.
Thank you so much. It is absolute chaos that I don't get paid for, but I also don't trust anyone else to do it. So
Oh,
No.
believe me, from a cast mom to a cast dad, I totally get it.
yeah.
No, but yeah, you have a great aura on stage that's so fun to watch, and
Well,
you get
thank
the
you.
facial expressions on the money at the right timing. Like, that's 50% of the job, and then you also are hyper aware of of the material you're working with, so you also bring your own characterization that's funny. Oh my gosh, so funny and engaging, and so like doesn't shock me that you're an incredible cast lead. on Sins.
Probably
No,
not
thank
fair
you
of me
so
to
much.
say.
I try to walk that line between being my own entity on stage while being like as accurate as I can be to what I'm doing.
Right.
So like, yeah, thank you. That means a lot. Really, that is the goal I'm going for.
Well, it's exactly like you say, because it's probably not fair of me to say, but I've seen you as almost every role, but I think my favorite is you as Rocky, the one person who doesn't talk the whole movie.
Thank you. My secret, my entire Rocky is Michael Kelso from That 70s Show.
Oh, what inspiration.
And if I'm not mistaken, there is in fact a photo of you as Kelso Rocky.
Correct. During our 420 show.
Yes.
We need it for the blog. And as like a casting lead, what is auditioning people like for LA's premiere Shadowcast? You know, like, are people super interested in joining? Or do you get, like, I'm curious if you get natural actors all the time.
Okay, so this
you
is
know?
like a little multifaceted. So first of all, the Rocky audition process generally is like very straightforward with 98% of the other casts I've experienced. And I get probably, on a good night, I get like 2 people a night asking me about being involved in the show in some way. And like, you know, not everyone wants to be on stage. Some people want to just work the spotlight, and I love them for that.
Yeah.
And
yes.
the thing that, like, the second I'm having that conversation with them, I immediately tell them how our entire audition process works, because some people, like, that is the thing that makes them committed, and some people, that is the thing that scares them away. Because for us, we have, like, you have to train with the person who holds the role. You have to do a whole audition of select scenes in someone's living room in front of the cast who is just staring at you stone-faced. And then if you pass that, based on a vote, then you get to go do a stage audition, which we then vote on again. So, like, people who want to be a part of this, because we only take 3 people for each role that we have. People who want to be a part of it, like, they commit really early on. I see them attending shows weekly, and I can tell within 2 weeks if someone is going to fully follow through on the audition process or not.
Yes, absolutely. As another cast lead again, I will 100% agree with you on that. And on Chaos, I know we have them start out as Transylvanians, and then eventually, once they get the costume together, we'll have them audition for the role. And you can tell how committed a person is by how quickly they get a costume together.
Absolutely. And like another factor that we always do is if it's like your first or second show, I basically make you show up to like 5 shows as an audience member, because if you don't care to be there for 5 shows as an audience member, you don't care enough about like this weird movie and community enough to fully commit to this costuming and planning and everything like that. That is the thing I've learned. And like, not a judgment on people. Some people
It's a
know from
bigger
the second show they
commitment
see.
than
Yeah.
People
Yeah, it's a bigger
realize
commitment than
it
they
is.
expect.
Yeah.
Well, especially because you guys are a weekly show.
Oh my gosh.
We do it
And
once a
also,
month.
like, the not getting paid, and you have to get your whole costume together and
Yes.
everything like that. That, like, and if you don't know how to do makeup, or you don't know how to sew, or you don't know how to style a wig, like, you either have to figure it out or find someone who can.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, YouTube becomes your best friend.
Yes, or you go broke.
Yes. Yes.
But so, since it's a weekly show, and you just said you had 3 regular cast members for each role, what's it like casting that often? Because sometimes it's hard to pull together a monthly show, and it's sometimes hard to make sure you have a criminologist and a Dr. Scott for a monthly or a bi-weekly show. Like,
Yeah, so part of our thing is if you hold a role, you are required to be able to perform that role at least once a month. And it's also ranked within each role. You have a primary, secondary, and third string within each role. And so the primary is actually in charge of their own casting, and usually primaries will submit like what they're doing for that month at once. Our cast also used to operate on a week-by-week casting basis, and I basically made everyone send me a month of planning in advance. So if I had to get guests, I could much more easily get guests 3 weeks out instead of that weekend. Yeah, so it's a lot of like self-sufficiency of our performers, which is actually really nice. And then, you know, I usually have a little bit of finagling. Like sometimes people will send me casting and I'll have a performer who holds 2 different roles and they'll accidentally cross over on one night, or I'll have to find a guest to fill in on a certain role. And some of our performers, like, they may not hold certain roles, but they are allowed to guest perform as certain roles. So usually I can find like a full solution within cast, but every now and then I gotta ask someone from another cast or something like that. Or sometimes we have people who are coming in from out of town that are on casts that are further away, and they'll reach out to us about performing with them on certain nights.
The coolest.
I know that I for sure asked. I'm pretty sure I messaged like Renee or somebody and was like,
oh yeah,
I want to perform. Point me to the right person, because I didn't know who leadership was at the time.
Yeah.
I've definitely reached out to Sins, because you guys are so much fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. Call this me tossing my name into the hat for guesting.
Once it's allowed again.
Yeah, once things go back into normal functioning.
Pretty please. It seems like right when I fill up all my roles, suddenly like 2 people will disappear from one role, and then I have like, it's never too bad because it's always just like 1 or 2 roles at a time that are my problem children that I can like never get everyone on. Like for a while we had almost no Columbias because we all know what a nightmare of a costume that is to get.
Yes, absolutely. Luckily, I have an extra, like, whole Columbia costume, basically, so...
Oh my god.
And I also have, I had... She went to college, sadly, but I had one of our Transylvanians who was under 18, had a full Columbia costume, knew the role, and was allowed to perform everything except floor show, so all I had to do was cast somebody else in floor show for Columbia, which was so easy because it's like slap a red wig on your head and go out there. I don't care.
Call it good, yeah.
But cool. And then Abby, if we could get your voice.
Hello.
Hi.
Is that?
You are the cast photographer for Sins of the Flesh.
Yes.
And oh my gosh, like, first of all, thank you, because I'm certain I'm using some of your photos somewhere in some capacity on our Instagram or blog.
Oh, it is always a pleasure.
And, like, also, double thank you, because, like, the photographers at these events are the unsung heroes on casts, because you capture these moments that, you know, I'm personally looking through these photos from months ago and totally get kicked in the nostalgia feels of like, wow, this was the best night. That was so much fun.
Oh, thank you. It's definitely something that I've always kind of done. Like, I can look back through my photos from high school and see my, virgin, my first Rocky Horror night. I have photos from people who like would eventually become my friends on cast. Like there's a really great one. I don't remember what the theme night was, but I was in high school. I did join in high school. This was prior to my joining though. I was pretty young, and I took a picture with one of the security guys because he was dressed up as the Old Spice. He was dressed as the Old Spice man thing.
Hell yeah.
He looked great. And yeah, I could not resist a picture with that. So it's like, and later I would, get to know him. This guy's name is Brian. He's such a sweetie. Like, it's funny to see how those things kind of come back around. But I always love taking photos. It is just like the thing that I do, and I gives me an activity. It is nice to, capture that kind of joy, and it's also a, sneaky power. You can't get on my bad side.
Truly, yeah, please.
Well, and I actually think that I met you officially through Tumblr years and years and years
Sounds
ago.
about right.
So, and I mean, your photography impressed me then, and I don't even think that you were officially the cast photographer then. You were just kind of doing your own photography work.
Yeah.
And
I was not
I-
officially cast photographer until kind of recently, and even then, like when I joined cast again after I moved back to LA from college, I was like, okay, hi, I have a chronic illness. Please go easy on me. Like I don't think that I like this is a generous lending of my midnights back to my favorite cast, and then the person who was the main photographer could no longer serve that role, and then cast mom and dad were like, hi.
Hi, hello, please.
Pretty please, we love you so much. We know
Will
you were
you
not
be our
paying you
cast
for like
child?
for also like just the having of hundreds of dollars of equipment. Like
I mean,
Yes.
to be
not-
fair, a Columbia costume I feel like is roughly equivalent to at least some of my equipment. Like, you know,
you're not wrong.
but I appreciate it.
So, how often do you photograph shows? Are you there weekly as well? Are you mostly full time? Would you say you go most?
Great question. It is completely dependent on whatever else I'm doing. Like the rule
Yeah,
has always
fair.
been that if I have another gig that pays and I can't make it, then I go do that. And as I mentioned, I have lupus. Very fun little fact about me. That you know, some days I'm just too tired and I can't go, or I leave early. Like, just
I'd say
absolutely.
as someone who has to keep track of your attendance, the math works out that you're there like every other week probably, which is still
And
a
that's
lot.
not bad.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
more often than we go to Rocky.
Yeah, we're monthly.
Yeah.
So, and then sometimes I moonlight at Midnight Insanity. So,
Yeah,
Not
and
as
that's the
regular.
thing of like, you know, I'll get Abby for like 6 weeks at a time, and then, you know, 2 weekends back to back. They say to me, like, I got a wedding, and then I got a sorority gig next week. And yeah, as someone who also has to pay my bills, I have always told everyone on cast paid gigs come first, for sure.
Yes,
yeah. But then
absolutely.
like some nights, you know, I'll go do a sorority gig because I did a lot of these college parties back in the day when I could, you know, be in enclosed spaces with other people. And then I would just be like, wow, that was heterosexual, and then I'd come back to Rocky.
Well, and you're also a performer, so which roles do you perform as?
I would say that like my main role, if I had to have a main role, would be Transylvanian. I was the
Heck
gay,
yeah.
Heck
I was
yeah.
the gay brown Transylvanian, and I just loved being a Transylvanian because I could goof off and I could play with the
Yeah.
other performers, and like that was where I got the most audience interaction too, which I loved doing. Clearly, as like a photographer and just like as a Rocky person. That you know you can goof off and run around and just like mess with the audience, and like as long as you make it back to a spot where like if you're expected to be time warping, you best be time warping, but it is definitely one of the more lax roles.
yeah,
Yes,
it's
we
like
are
a glorified audience member.
Yeah.
Like you're basically getting paid by not having to pay admission.
Precisely. That was in fact one of the reasons that I joined in the first place. I'm cheap.
We are very pro Transylvanian on this podcast. We both spent a lot of time as Transylvanians, so we're like, heck yeah, it's honestly the best role.
Well,
It's also the thing that like made me like Sins and start moving towards Sins was like seeing how much energy them having Transylvanians, because Midnight Insanity at the time had none, just because we were a very thin cast at the time.
Yes.
But like seeing like this group of like 3 to 6 other people just like running through the audience and hamming everyone up, like I had never really, you know, we'd only had Transylvanians for like our big anniversary shows, so it was never a thing that seemed important or necessary because it just hadn't been a part of my Rocky experience for so long. And then like
but it adds
seeing
so
a show where they
much.
really did it and really committed to being the party members, like it made me love them more than I thought I could.
Exactly. They're your hype people. And like I've said this a couple times about a couple of our recent Transylvanians on Sins, where it's like they're my favorite part of the show because I can look over to I'm gonna call out Sergio because I've told him to his face that he's one of my favorite Transylvanians. Like I'll go look at Sergio and he's like truly the biggest ham sandwich on the stage, and it's a treat every time, and he's always doing something funny, and it's like you should be able to look away from the main characters and still have a fun time.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
I've
yeah.
100% called the Transylvanians the DJ Khaled's of the show.
Oh yeah.
They're the
Also,
hype men.
Like
Don't have
zero-
Transylvanians? Congrats, you played yourself.
Yes, but also like zero shame as an other total ham. As someone who plays Frank, the night I get Transylvanians, where you just have like a group of guaranteed people like literally kissing your ass all night, is very fun as a performer. I'm not gonna pretend it's not.
Yeah, and I've been a Rocky as well lately, which has been pretty fun, and being able to go over and dance with people and not be like all alone in the little corner is quite nice.
Well, I have an idea that now you should be either Perry Bedden or Henry Wolf. Tony Cowan? Henry Wolf?
Why is that?
Whoever the shape-shifting
Combined as
Transylvanian is. But you could be the photographer Transylvanian who has
of course.
your camera all night. And you could take photos as a Transylvanian, like doing the time warp and stuff.
He is also the smallest Transylvanian, Abby.
I thought that the little old lady was.
Oh, that's true.
Which, like, that was also the thing, but that we had actually somebody who was smaller than me as that Transylvanian. I was like, well, I can't compete.
We love Sadie. Sadie is one of our favorites.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We've done like heavy research into every single one of the Transylvanians, so now we know them all by name.
I love it. I love to see it.
Well, since you've like taken so many photos of the weekly shows, is there a specific photo that comes to your mind when you think of like, that's my best photo I've ever taken, or like that's my favorite?
I don't always post a ton of Sins photos to my photography Instagram, but I will say there was an interesting one. It's not my favorite photo, and I was really surprised that this was the photo chosen for this purpose. But one of my photos will be published in an academic book by Dr. Sarah Taylor Ellis about queer temporalities and musical theater. So that's pretty exciting. That's a picture of Nina as Frank from Sins. Not my favorite photo. I mean, it's great. Like, it's totally passable photo, but it's not my favorite. I think some of my more favorite ones are some that have ended up in black and white, which I know is kind of unpopular. There's a photo that I'm looking at on my Instagram right now.
It's gorgeous. In black and white or color. Yeah.
I like the black and white ones. I think are a little underrated. I think it's it harkens back to our age of a show, as it were. Yeah. I'm looking at a photo right now of Austin and Mina in the spacesuits. That is really fun. Highlights that kind of backlit look. If I'd known this was coming up, I would have researched my backlog. I just love seeing performers in the theater in the full costume. I think it really brings home what we do regularly and how much we tend to embody it, and that it's like taking place in this like very banal location.
Yeah.
Yes.
In that same weekend, we did this very big group Trixie as a bunch of Playboy bunnies. It was like a bunch of people on our cast who either are Trixies or like do burlesque things. So it was all generally like the dancers of Sins.
Oh my gosh, the photo of all of you as the bunnies in the lobby is like my. It's
I know that photo.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah, the like done hair, matching makeup, silk corsets, everything, and we're just in a movie theater lobby with the ugliest fucking carpet, like, but framed and
with
lit
the concession
perfectly.
stand behind you, and all of the lights are lit. Yeah, exactly. It's
so
chef's
good.
kiss. Such a great photo.
I love all those ones. It's always fun to break out the more intense gear and really like get everybody gussied up.
So we've talked a lot about Sins. And now I'm curious about your opinions on the film. And so far we've met Rocky. We haven't yet met the
His
delivery
brain donor.
Right. Good good way to phrase it. Yes. And in talking through it with each other, are realizing that like we still haven't been introduced to Frankenfurter by name
Officially, yeah.
and like we just gotten to meet Riff and Magenta and Columbia, like barely, but it's a lot of disorienting, like cutting back and forth in narrative sequences. And what do you guys, do you have any theories?
It's like honestly so hard to think about this movie now, like not as a cohesive unit, because it's just like burned into the back of my eyelids. It's like a cohesive thing.
We're having to like put on a brand new lens watching it in this manner, doing it 7 minutes at a time. It's like, ugh, it's so bizarre.
Yeah, so we've like just met Rocky, and this is a detail that all of you know, but for the rest of you at home, his belly button is actually plugged up because he's a creation and wasn't born.
Yes.
So he doesn't have a belly button, which I always thought was a fun little, like, it's the only thing scientific in the entire movie.
So you're telling me
Not
that
having a
Kyle
belly
XY
button.
was actually a ripoff of the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Indeed.
Hell yeah. Everything is Rocky Horror. Everything's a ripoff of Rocky Horror. There.
The more you know.
That proves it.
We have a theory that since we had a shot of one of the David statues holding the speakers and he had no belly button, and then we had that shot of Rocky with no belly button, our theory is that potentially Rocky is a de-Medusa'd marble statue.
Yeah.
See, I have actually had this thought the other way because I did catch this, like, as I am getting into the Rocky fandom. I remember having this thought of noticing the Davids did it as well. But my thought is they are previous creations who are who get Medusa'd, who misbehave in other ways and get Medusa'd, which, like, we won't find out what being Medusa'd is. I mean, context clues. You can figure it out. What the fuck did Medusa do? But, like, we don't find out that Frank has this power until, 45 minutes later. But that was always my thought, was it was other hunks he had around who
I definitely had that theory before, and I totally think it could go either way. But another theory that we brought up in our latest episode is that what if Rocky is a Benjamin Buttoned, youngified Charles Atlas's corpse? Because Frank has the ability to bring things to life. Charles Atlas only died 2 years before the stage show happened. What if Frank dug up Charles Atlas, youngified him, and brought him back to life?
I love the speculation, and honestly, I deliberately didn't smoke weed before this because I was like, I gotta sound coherent, but maybe that was the wrong choice.
I'm trying to remember
time.
what the line about Charles Atlas is in Sword of Damocles, and if this, that's why I'm silent. I'm trying to figure out if this would help confirm or deny.
Well, he says that he carries the Charles Atlas seal of approval, and that I kind of interpret it as Frank throwing around a impressive sounding term
that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, Transylvanians who are not from Earth and who have no context to who Charles Atlas is. So, ooh, cool. Ooh, a seal of approval. That's fancy. Because then Frank goes on to sing Charles Atlas Part 1, which is just essentially him ripping off the advertisement that Charles Atlas put out in the
50s or 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I Can Make You a Man for the stage show was called Charles Atlas, and it was the Charles Atlas song, and it was literally completely rewritten for the movie. So us going off of that theory and speculating wildly, we're like, what if he actually is Charles Atlas?
Mm-hmm.
Or if not, reanimated, who's to say Frank can't? Frank obviously has the ability to manipulate DNA in some way, so maybe Frank was just, at Charles Atlas's funeral and grew himself a whole new Charles Atlas as well.
Ooh.
I like where you're going with this. I will say that if you're gonna clone, they do start out as babies. So
we don't know how long he was in that tank.
That's fair. That's real.
It's gay-ass growth hormone, Abby.
Oh, is that what that stands for?
That's what's in the tank.
Okay.
That's what's in the tank.
Yeah, that's what came out of the forbidden juice box. That's what the rainbow was.
I'm really behind on this, you guys. Honestly, my queer reading of the Rocky Horror Picture Show needs to be reconsidered.
If you watch it with just chaos lenses on, just absolute nonsense lenses, then you'll come up with the same weird things that we are.
Well, it's a little wild and unfounded, but then there's also Jim Sharman calls out the forks on the dinner table as being canon for the aliens not knowing how many forks get set on a dinner table.
Oh wow, I thought
So
you were gonna
it's
take
like-
that a totally other direction, and that like the aliens inside of the meat suits actually have that many hands and require that many forks to feed their many mouths. Like really, I just
Wait, I like
my
that.
gosh.
I like that
Okay,
better.
well, that's my new theory now, is that they have 8 appendages that they all need a fork at the same time.
the proteges
I-
for The Simpsons.
I have a query that I
Oh, a
just now
query?
thought of.
Yes,
a query
please.
that I just now thought of. Okay, so if Columbia, Riff, and Magenta are all servants, but only Riff and Magenta are the aliens, why are Riff and Magenta's outfits coordinated and Frank and Columbia's are for the first time we see them?
Okay, so our theory on that is that Columbia was Eddie's groupie, and then
Or-
Eddie kind of disappeared. Haley doesn't agree. Haley doesn't think that they were dating, and I don't.
Katie
Her
doesn't
claims are
want-
unfounded.
Katie doesn't want to live in a reality where Columbia and Eddie are not relationship goals. So we haven't yet solidified our one theory on it. Columbia is an eternal groupie to any rock star in the room. So not only is she Frank's groupie and she's been hanging out at the castle for the last week, she also wishes she could sleep with Eddie. Like, because, he's a rock and roller. I want to be with him, you know?
See, whereas my theory is Columbia was like, well, my Eddie's gone, so I have to be a groupie to somebody, and then kind of picked up on Frank's style.
Like, I definitely think that it was, she doesn't possess the ability to, like, not be codependent on someone.
Yes.
So, she's got to be codependent on someone, and it just moved from one, over-the-top character to another.
Mm-hmm. So who do you think she was a groupie to first, though?
I definitely think Eddie, I think there's definitely something to be said about, like, he's probably the dealer in this whole situation.
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
And so, always easy to get a girlfriend if you also hook said girlfriend on drugs at the same time and you are supplying the drugs.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, and then, so we were speculating that since Frank said he thought you were the Candyman, that maybe Riff didn't know that Frank had Eddie in the freezer and thought that it was Eddie at the door delivering drugs.
Yeah, they were anticipating a delivery, and that's why they opened the door for Brad and Janet to begin with.
Or is there just a new delivery guy? Because quite frankly, pardon the pun, how does Frankenfurter move Eddie by himself? Like, Eddie is too big for Frank to deal with by himself.
Gotta bring them statues back to life.
Yeah,
Fair
he
point.
de-Medusa'd. I love that. That is
Can
a
I
good
just say
point.
that I really hope for Columbia's sake that she becomes her own groupie.
I mean, she's dead now, so
We never see that on screen. Wait a minute, yes. I
Yes, we
don't
did.
even
Yeah.
remember. I haven't
Okay.
seen this movie in 8 months, and I guess that's too long.
well, I mean, technically, you only see her get shot and then spin around and kind of fall.
Well, if
And hold
we
her
know
boob.
that
Yes.
it may have just hurt. It may have just, like, singed her.
Yeah,
a
this
This
little
is true.
bit.
I have hope. I have hope. I'm an optimist. What can I say?
Just a little spicy boob moment. It's fine. We all have them.
But if Frank is able to reanimate and able to bring life to something that's maybe been anti-mattered, like, could Columbia come back? Could Rocky come back? Could Frank come back if Frank has the secret to life? You know? Is Columbia dead?
I'm pretty sure Frank is done for, but, like, the technology might still exist. But it seems that he and Dr. Scott are on the same level, and we know for sure that Dr. Scott survives the whole ordeal. So maybe it's up to him, really.
And when the castle takes off, does it leave the pool there? Are Frank and Rocky still flies in the soup?
Now we're asking
Good
the real
question,
questions. Yeah, we're.
because-
I'm telling you, man, speculating wildly.
It's really fun.
Another section that I'd like to move on to is you both identify kind of in the middle, if not leaning on to one side of the gender spectrum. And we were just wondering how that experience has helped or hindered or, just influenced your time in the Rocky community.
I came to Rocky as a young high schooler, was already very into the LGBTQ community at my schools, had done Day of Silence for years, went to the GSA, I was certified gay, but I did not know, if then or now, if I have a lot of queer folks in my family, and I certainly didn't really have, a model for how I cared to live my life, and so going to Rocky Horror was really, I don't want to, eye-opening. Still feels like I knew that these things existed, but I had never felt as though I could be in a place where it was so open and loud and, it was also routine. It was always a place that was going to be there on Saturday nights. I knew that if I, wanted to experience gay culture in the way that it was expressed there, it would be there. And so knowing all of these things was really appealing as a young person when you just couldn't really go to gay bars, couldn't really interact with a lot of the things that at least gay life in LA is really centered around. It's a lot of drinking. It's for older people. Pride is sponsored by alcohol companies. There's a lot of limitations for young LGBTQ people, and Rocky did not have those things.
Yeah, and even I'll go so far as to say the LA gay culture is very gay heavy. Not as friendly to females in my experience.
It's very G heavy and not so much LGBTQ plus
right
inclusive.
And Rocky is you go and there are so many just everybody of every different identification on any variant on the spectrum, and so many girls that if you're even just another girl looking for girls to hang out with, it's another safe space. That's also what the community provides. I don't identify as non-binary, but the culture in LA has not.
It isn't necessarily it's not welcoming to people who don't specifically identify as a gay man.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And I'd love to circle back around to that kind of social aspect of it, but I also want to let Austin answer your question.
Yeah, I'd love to hear Austin's interpretation as well. Totally.
Yeah, I mean, I had an awareness, late middle school, that I liked girls, women in some way, and I was pretty out about it. I came out as bi in my freshman or sophomore year of high school, and I think it is either my sophomore or it is the summer between my sophomore and junior years of high school. It's the first time I go to Rocky, and there was a woman stripping in front of me on stage for everyone all of a sudden, and I was so flustered I didn't know what to do with myself in the moment. It was Stezzy. It was the person who ends up teaching me how to Trixie later, is a very cool, very versatile performer and creator. But then later, once I'm actually a part of casts and a part of this, as someone who was, I got labeled as a tomboy growing up and always was both on stage but wanted to learn all the nitty-gritty backstage, and I had a dad that refused to not let me know how to fucking fix and build and tumble like a boy. So I always grew up with it all, but didn't really have a community of exploration. I didn't grow up with anyone who did drag or anything like that, or went clubbing or dressed up or whatever. The dressing up was theater, which is very cisgendered, traditional theater.
Yes. Yeah.
And to have a community, as I'm figuring out, Rocky is the first time I hear people using they pronouns, and when I start kind of, I just asked people at Rocky, like let's try they pronouns and like see how that goes for a second.
Yeah.
You know, and it was the first place where I felt I had the empowerment of like, no, you can demand that people use your correct pronouns. Like, you're allowed that as a person to exist. And also, it's kind of the thing that like forced me to have a reckoning with how I externalize and like how I internalize my gender as well, and getting over the hurdles of like, I am a smoking hot woman when I do Trixie. I don't enjoy being that off stage. I am full tits and lashes and like done as Trixie. I actively do not enjoy looking like that once I am like not being a performer. But I love doing it for this fight. I love like the 5 minutes of the most peak glittery femininity, and it was the
and
thing
sometimes
like,
that's all you need is just 5
it's all
minutes.
it's all I want.
Do it.
But like, it was where I dressed in full boy drag for the first time was at Rocky, and the first time I like fully taped down my tits, and like my performance of Rocky, the character specifically, was this full transformation from like cute, spunky, like sporty spice gold bikini Rocky to like now I play like full chest taped, abs painted on, 90s boy band blonde wig. Like, I play full Ken doll Rocky now, and like that in particular was this really fun evolution of how I want to be perceived on stage. You know, and I pack and have a fake dick when I play Frank, but I specifically don't when I play Rocky because I want to be this weird Andrew Ken doll character.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of your Rocky, we do have a really fantastic picture that we actually just posted today of you as Rocky with your chest taped and your amazing boy band wig. So if you haven't seen Austin's Rocky, please go check out our Instagram.
And we've tagged, of course, so you can see the rest.
Yes, thank you. Always important.
Yeah, I think that Austin's really bringing up something important about the way that being perceived can be powerful at Rocky. That I use she and they pronouns because I feel like my femininity is political, and to use both like she and they pronouns I think really represents that. But I don't feel like at Rocky I am even necessarily seen as anyone
a
beyond
gender at
yeah
all.
yeah it's like not a gender. Yeah, it's very separate from gender, whereas like the reality that I contend with by being seen as a woman has honestly, I don't think, given me anything in my life. Like, I think that my reality of womanhood has been painful, quite literally, because of my chronic illness and getting services for that and being seen as legitimate and being taken seriously. And so being seen as like not necessarily separate from my gender, but it's just like such a secondary thought to people that I met at Rocky, that it truly allowed me, I think, to separate enough from it to be able to examine it, because I felt trapped in femininity, and I think that Rocky has allowed me to go back and like examine that performance and that like space within gender and decide where I care to lie.
Yeah, and also, like, on that general note, I, like, Rocky, like, if I ever wanted to try a new presentation, you know, and, like, it is all just pretend at the end of the day, but if I, you know, the first times I started dressing more masculine was at Rocky, because it wasn't going to be a question of, like, oh, that's new or whatever. It was just, like, if it looked good, I was going to get complimented on it. If it didn't, I might not. Like, so be it.
Rocky's the perfect place to do that, honestly.
Exactly. And like my other absolute favorite thing of like, because of who comes to Rocky and the variety of disguises that I put on when I'm at Rocky, I have confused everyone from gay men to straight women, and it is a fucking delight. Like, just generally, like, not people not being able to figure out what the fuck is going on. That is my gender euphoria, is like if you can't figure out what the fuck is happening.
Yes.
Which then, like, on the other hand, like when I play Rocky, like I wear a skirt and like a little bra because I like cannot escape the reality of my body ever, but especially in a role
But
like
that's
that where
great
you're
too.
supposed to be.
I love a female
Oh,
Rocky.
thank you. Yeah, like I think that just like looks best on me. Like I ordered little shorts for when I was gonna play Rocky, and they just like they didn't look cute, but that did. And like I like leaning into the playing against type in that case. And so like when Frank brings Rocky over and is like, what do you think of him, the perfect specimen of manhood, like showing him to Janet, I'm just like poking at my fat. I'm like, you like this perfect specimen of manhood? Like I think it's funny.
But it's so good, and like there are so many ways that Rocky, the perfect specimen, not even of manhood, just the perfect specimen in general, can be interpreted. And like, yes, there are lines in the movie that specify that he's a man, whatever, blah blah blah, whatever. But if you just take it out of the context of the film, he's the perfect specimen, so you can take that into your
the
mind.
beholder, man.
Yeah, and make your perfect specimen in the way that you want it to be made. Make your own golden, deity.
Exactly.
Your
and
own
like
interpretation of a tank child,
Truly the don't dream it, be it, as it were.
It's very much not you have to be the 0% body fat Peter Henwood perfect thing that I have seen. I have seen skinny, lanky boys who everyone wants to typecast as Rocky be boring as fuck, and I have seen people who, like, you never imagined would be Rocky on your stage put on the greatest show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, Abby is like a very joyful Rocky to watch. They're a very light Rocky in it. Like, sometimes Rocky's takes himself very seriously, and he's a funny character.
He is. Oh my god. And like I definitely allow my lack of ability to memorize anything play to my advantage because Rocky is a giant idiot, and so it really goes well. Like I've had like people turn me around on stage, and I think that's funny.
Same.
Yeah, he's a small dough. He's still figuring out his.
Look, I'm just 7 hours old. I cannot figure out.
I also enjoy, like, Abby, in your giving into your ability, like the push-up scene.
Oh yeah.
Like Abby, I've just watched just lay on the floor, just like pose with like their laying down with their feet up, kicking and just like being cute for the couple of push-ups. Whereas like I'm the very other type of ham where I'm like, hey babies, I can do a one-handed push-up. Like I'm just gonna do that for a second instead. But
show
you
off.
don't like. If you're good at it, you don't need to have the stupid human tricks like that as well.
And anything that I can do to like bring humor to like such a clearly against type role, I would argue that is my gender.
I love that.
I have a question since you're both, seasoned Rocky Shadowcasters.
Generous.
When you perform as Rocky, do you think as Rocky or do you think as Eddie?
An interesting question.
There's a distinct lack of thinking is really the answer. Because it is half a brain. It is half a brain, we must remember.
I mean, honestly, I would argue that the way that I think now with my quarantine Swiss cheese brain is closer to Rocky than I've ever been.
It's called method acting, Abby.
Thank you.
Obviously.
Thank you. I'm a committed Rocky Horror member.
Well, just to circle back to an earlier part of your conversation.
Well, one of the reasons we wanted Abby you on our show to begin with is you had messaged us with really insightful commentary around how Rocky Horror has become a church of sorts for people who are otherwise, like we were saying earlier, they're not included in the scene, let's say. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it. I've been thinking about this for a lot of reasons, like Rocky as a location of interaction for people. over the pandemic, we've been kind of watching our community tackle some like really tough things about the way that people have behaved, the ways that people have behaved. And so that's been an interesting aspect of like considering what we want as a community. And so watching that, I was also trying to consider why such a disparate group of people find themselves together at all.
Mhm.
And earlier in the year, I read a rad book that I highly recommend called Palaces for the People by Eric Kleinenberg. And it addresses social infrastructure, or the idea of social infrastructure, um, which is social infrastructure are places like churches, like playgrounds, like pickup basketball games, the NAACP, the Masons, like all these like uh, community spaces where people of different types meet. And so I think it's really interesting to look at Rocky Horror as this kind of space. When you're thinking about like why a community develops and works, you're kind of thinking about that like social cohesion and how we can best make that happen. Kleinenberg asserts that it's through human interaction, so like face to face. You can, as we have seen over the pandemic, it can be done
Mhm.
more remotely, but that face to face interaction, I would still argue, is an important
Mhm.
aspect of this. So he
Mhm.
says human
Mhm.
interaction and joint participation in shared projects, not merely from a principled commitment to abstract values and beliefs. And I think that last part is important. Rocky is a place where all kinds of people come together and people of different ages, which is not necessarily something that you get everywhere. Um,
Mm-mm.
Kleinenberg distinguishes this though from like social capital, which is kind of measuring people's relationships and interpersonal networks. Like you can do that with Rocky, and I'm sure people have, especially of like who's fucked who. I'm sure that chart's out there. That would be more social capital. But this, what I'm trying to focus on is like Rocky as a like location of meeting. So it's like the physical conditions that determine how that capital develops at all. Rocky is an interesting place though for non-heterosexual people. I mean, that's even people who are cool
Well,
with the gays or
anybody.
gays themselves, but also
Yeah,
anybody. But I would argue that you do have to be cool with the gays.
that's true. I
The
And
agree.
girls and the gays, as it were.
yeah.
I
And
like
so
it.
I think for a lot of people, especially gay people, and I'm going to use gay as opposed to LGBTQ just because I will trip over my words. So this is just for me and my ability to speak. Um, so non-heterosexual people, gay people, are often isolated in a way that other folks growing up are not, of marginalized
Mhm.
communities. It's not necessarily hereditary. Sometimes you may share this with other people in your family, and sometimes you may not.
Mhm.
There is the visual cues of belonging to a gay community, but those are not necessarily culturally consistent and could even be dangerous to put on.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
Further, a lot of we kind of talked about this, that gay spaces can be exclusionary. Like gay bars are probably the
Mhm.
most prominent gay space in Los Angeles, at least,
Yes.
for people who are not gay men and are not into alcohol or the culture around
Mhm.
alcohol, whether you are an
Well, it
alcoholic
totally
yourself.
ostracizes people
Exactly.
who are sober. Like, if people don't want to be in an environment where they're encouraged to drink, like,
Hmm.
where are you going to meet
Yeah,
other
absolutely.
Also, as
LGBTQ
another
plus
little
people?
note, as someone with different disabilities from Abby,
Mhm.
I have like a lot of sensory issues,
Mhm.
and so it seems weird that I should be able to do well in Rocky, but that's like a very controlled
Mhm.
loud. But I have a lot of issues with like bars and clubs and like not being able to control, having less control over that environment. Like Rocky is a consistency.
Mhm.
Yeah, Rocky, you know
and-
when it's going to be loud. It's not a chaotic
Exactly.
thing.
Exactly. So, like, for me, bars and clubs are, like, incredibly overwhelming to exist in. So, like, they're a bad social place for me, and I imagine with pretty much anyone else with other sensory issues similar to mine.
Absolutely. They're expensive. They're age limited. They're alcoholic.
Mhm.
Like, there are so many reasons
They're
that gay bars
usually
should
not
not be the
ADA
center of gay life.
accessible.
Mhm. Mhm. I agree.
Yeah. And then you get somewhere like a movie theater. It's a space where people, regardless of age, can come together for a superordinate goal. So something that is above all of the other things. Like, you know, people go to bars for lots of reasons. But if you're coming to a movie theater, you're there to watch a movie, or in our case, to perform in front of it. And then to connect with people in the process, since Rocky is a social experience. So if you're sharing these rituals and traditions in a way that you might never have had before, like, you know, you're sacrificing virgins, you're, you know, putting on this makeup, you're putting on this show, that creates this really cohesive space for people of all different walks of life to really come together and put those differences aside. Earlier, I had kind of mentioned that this is different from people who share abstract values and beliefs, so that, like, while we as a community, I hope, share a number of beliefs, that's really not something that you have to agree on in order to participate. Like, you just have to be there
No.
and do your thing.
Yeah.
But in the process,
And be respectful.
exactly, and be respectful. I mean,
Yeah.
like, being respectful, I think, is something that kind of goes without saying in a conversation about social infrastructure.
Yeah, like a thing that I talk to my cast members a lot about, because I will not let them have drama overlap with cast, basically, of like, you don't all gotta like each other, but y'all gotta get along.
Yep.
Like, there's a difference.
I think that a good comparison is pick up basketball games. So you'll get people with different political preferences, different heritages, religions, class statuses, but they are exposed to this like cross section of ideas when they just go play basketball. And these people are likely not people that they necessarily see in other parts of life. So it's this space where you get to meet people that you may not otherwise meet. Kleinenberg also says that lingering is really crucial. Efficiency can be the enemy of creating these networks and these connections. So because we just freaking hang out all the time, not only do we hang out before the show in front of the theater smoking, but we hang out in the lobby, and then we hang out back,
We go
and then
get
we go to
Denny's
Denny's
afterwards. Or Mars.
And yeah, exactly. So that lingering is really where these connections are built, and this infrastructure continues. And so I think it's also interesting that we have created so many rituals and traditions here that, like, these are, if you want to participate in Rocky Horror, then you should sit down with somebody who plays the role that you want to play, as we've discussed, and learn how to do that makeup and learn these cues. You start to become you know, indoctrinated into the cult, as we say. But when you share this thing with other people that's not genetically inherited, you have to seek that thing out and seek out belonging. And so by learning these you know, kind of secret things that only performers know, then you start to feel like you are included in not only this community that we've created, but maybe in an identity that you otherwise felt excluded from.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, this actually, we talked about this a little bit in our group message earlier, where, like, it's a weird, silly movie. Like, why do you think I guess the crux it bears is that it's so bad it's good. Like, why are we flocking to this? Why are we making a community out of this movie if it's just, like, 140 minutes of
I mean, what a question. I feel like I've heard that question posed so many times recently because of the popularity of The Room, which I also, you know, I've gone to multiple midnight viewings. I haven't been since The Disaster Artist was a thing.
Oh my gosh.
It must be a really interesting shift.
Have you seen it?
Oh, I have not seen it, actually. I haven't even read the book. Like, I wanted to read the book first, but, like...
Well, I mean,
you know.
If you love The Room, you should watch The Disaster Artist, because it's so... true. Like, you can tell James Franco idolizes Tommy Wiseau, like, to an nth degree, that this characterization, like, oh my gosh, you need to do it as soon as we're done talking right now.
See, that's part of what kind of freaks me out, because, like, having met Tommy Wiseau multiple times, again, while I was in high school, I'm like, why?
Dreams. I have them.
You know, I think that, to answer your question, why people have flocked around this movie, I think it's exactly what Abby was explaining, was that there is this community and these relationships and these bonds that are built on top of this silly, ridiculous movie. And that kind of relationship is something that most people seek out.
Absolutely. I think it's an important community space for just the gay community in general, that a lot of these institutions that mirror it are exclusionary to gay people. You know, even civic groups, you know, if you join as a gay person, they're like, oh, are you going to make this gay now? Like, it's even if they're necessarily accepting places, it's not always, like, you know, sexuality and like the idea of what it means to be part of the LGBT community is still othered if the leadership themselves are not necessarily open to the idea of that being something centered, because it's just so, like, I don't know, the things that we do at Rocky Horror are just so big and fun and like harkens back to so many traditions of the LGBT community in general that it is difficult to bring these kinds of traditions elsewhere.
I think also a big part of it, of like the self-sustaining mechanism as well, is that it is, besides your movie ticket and potentially concessions, it's not a commodified gay space. Like, if you're at a gay bar, which, like, first of all, other facet to talk about, that lesbian bars, specifically lesbian bars, have completely died out in, like, the last 50 to 60 years.
They don't exist. It's a myth.
Yeah,
not lesbians, lesbian bars. Those are a myth.
Those are, yeah.
0.05 lesbian bars in LA.
Truly. And like, there used to be more lesbian bars, you know. I know lesbians who live in LA who, like, pay for the Uber down to Long Beach, which, for those of you not local, is at least a 45-minute drive, because the lesbian bars are only in Long Beach now. So,
and there's,
you know,
only
which,
one,
like,
2, maybe.
Yeah, there's like 2.
Oh,
and
must
so,
be
like,
nice.
that's a whole thing to get into, of, like, lesbian bars not existing, but also then, like, in that same realm, Rocky is a non-commodified gay space. If you are a freshly cracked egg of a trans person, if you are a little baby gay who only has a Starbucks job or is, like, in school all the time, like, it is your movie ticket and you're there for 3 hours.
It's like $11 at most places.
And it's so safe.
Yeah.
There's security there. Like, you have so many people that will have your back, that, like, don't deal with unfriendliness of any kind.
Yes.
And it's also a thing that you can kind of still hide in. Like, if you don't have an accepting space at home for your sexuality, for your gender, you know, you can tell your mom, like, oh, I'm going to the movies. Like,
Absolutely.
Yeah. And also, like, the costumery and the pageantry of Rocky, of, like, I know so many people who, like, just got dressed up for yucks going to Rocky, and that was the thing that, like, cracked something in their brain that was like, no, you want to do this all the time, my guy. Like, you know, I think it's so cool of just having this space that is free from all of the, like, you know, in LA and Orange County, we have such a capitalized and commodified, like, pride parade and things like that.
Yeah.
That it's kind of the thing that makes me not feel bad about the fact that Sins of the Flesh cannot be part of the LA Pride Parade, because we are neither a nonprofit nor a business, and you have to be one of those to participate in LA's Pride Parade.
Absolutely.
Can't
Wild.
just be a community organization.
and that's a recent development. We participated in the Pride Parade for a number of years.
We are nonprofit, I believe, at the Frida Cinema, and so the Frida Cinema gives us their float. So just come down with us.
Yeah, we'll have a huge... when parades are able to be non-virtual, I guess.
To be fair, I would argue that a wealth-based parade is one of the safer activities.
I mean, I was able to participate in one for Halloween, just like those of us who were on a truck together were all masked, but, you know, I fully hand rhinestoned a mask for Columbia.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
so
saw
cool.
Sasha's Instagram story about it.
Yeah.
Love. It was so good.
It was very cute. We had a lot of kids with signs saying that we saved Halloween. It felt nice.
Aww.
It ran really long, but it was
That
cute.
is really
Very cute.
sweet.
I did want to also say that I think that you folks bring up a really interesting point in, like, Rocky being a non-commodified space. In Palaces for the People, the title itself comes from, I believe it was what Andrew Carnegie himself called libraries. That the libraries were palaces for the people, a place that you could just go and be and, you know, hang around. And libraries play a really big role in his exploration of social infrastructure at all. And so, like, if you're a library person, really recommend this book. But I like the phrase palaces for the people. In fact, it, like, makes me kind of emotional that, like, we can build these spaces, you know?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting emotional now. Just makes me like,
okay.
Yeah, it's... I think that it's a wonderful, like...
It's such a
goal
unique
to have.
space.
Yeah.
Yes, it's such a unique culture that we have helped create and be a part of. And it really is a beautiful thing because now we can, if we see somebody who may be struggling in their home life or with their identity, we can recommend this safe space that we have found and helped create.
Absolutely, and like are continuing to shape. But we're doing like important work here that like we're not only continuing to stay in touch with each other, but we are doing something like some serious introspection that like I think at the point where we can go back, it is going to be just a joyful scene. I think people are going to be sobbing. Like it is going to be a big deal.
Think of all of the people in quarantine, all of the young people during the last 6 months who have come out and have realized that Rocky Horror is on Hulu and watch it for the first time and are like, oh, holy cow, I could go to like a movie theater without my parents and I could go and watch this movie and maybe meet other people my age that like this movie. Like, oh my gosh, shows are going to be, we're going to need to do them all the time now. 3 shows a night.
Also, like, another thing I wanted to touch on was just, like, the personal evolution of going from someone who, like, Rocky as point of exploration and, like, the first time allowing myself to, like, acknowledge certain realities about myself, and then, like, reaching a point that, like, I'm a cast lead on a very well-known cast, and then suddenly I get one of my newer cast members asking me about when did I know I was a lesbian, and being like, oh, the tables have now been turned. I remember asking these questions to someone at Rocky,
Exactly.
like, and now it is my turn to pass down the torch, young Padawan.
Well, it's like what
Now-
Abby's talking about with the generational experience. Like, in that way, it is very much like a church where, you know,
Yeah.
you have the old grandmas in the pews that have been praying rosaries since 1960 and have not left that seat.
Austin, we're the
Yeah,
grandparents
like it's
now.
worn from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that that's even more important now. Like, okay, I came to disability theory through queerness and through AIDS activism. And, like, learning how to deal with this pandemic has been inextricable from, like, that gayness. And thinking about how we lost an entire generation of people to learn from during the last major pandemic to hit the US, like, has made, like, I don't know, that silence is so stark to me that having a space where I can interact with people of other generations who can teach me that, like, it does get better. It does, like, you grow past this point. It's nice to see.
It's so wonderful.
To, like, circle back around to a point that we kind of touched on briefly of, like, I've been in Rocky for, like, 8 years now. Probably in the last 2 or 3, there has been a big reckoning with people who were very well known in the Rocky community, mostly men, being taken to task mostly by women, trans people, and other members of the LGBT community. Like, really being taken to task by those group of people and saying, like, Rocky has to be safe for people. Rocky cannot be a grooming environment. Rocky cannot be a predatory environment. Rocky cannot be an environment where we are edgy for the sake of being edgy. Like, that attitude was really bred in Rocky for a while, and we are now taking our community to task on that. And, you know, it's a reflection of other societal things that are going on, but we collectively are like putting it into that, and it is so fulfilling to like kind of be a part of that, but like see people that like I am actively friends with on the opposite coast of this country like hold people accountable. And it's like that's not just like conceptually happening, like those are my friends, those are people like I send Christmas cards to that are doing this work in our community.
Yeah.
Like I was also going to bring in something. Austin and I were on UCLA radio with another member of Sins of the Flesh that goes to UCLA. Their name is Diego. And Diego especially has been thinking about how we broaden our community reach and how we make what is, at least at Sins, a generally pretty white show more accessible to people of color.
Yes.
That's not a wrong general statement to make about Rocky as a whole community. It is a very pasty
It's a very
community.
white community.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, like everybody on this podcast is white.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. This is an audio format, folks. And so I won't like speak too heavily on this because I believe that Diego says it better. But whiteness does beget whiteness, and so when you're in a community organization like this, it can be really, really intimidating to come in as a person of color in a really diverse city and just see this like really white cast. And like gay culture, I would say, has this issue as well. So this is not a unique issue for Rocky Horror.
Yes.
But figuring out how we can just be a more upfront, accepting space is, I feel
absolutely.
like, first and foremost.
Please come and diversify, because I hate that it's so white. I hate that it feels...
If I may, real quick, I'm just also gonna plug Baltimore's chocolate-covered Rocky Horror. They do quarterly shows. They stream their shit. They do pictures. They do their costuming and hair differently, but it is like an incredible interpretation of the Rocky Shadow cast.
They do different choreography. So good.
They're cooler than all of us, and they do like kind of the best Rocky Horror, and they need way more credit.
And I'm sobbing that I'm not in Maryland, so it's fine.
Yeah.
We'll take a field trip.
So I have an ultimate question to ask you guys, because the criminologist makes claims that, the movie and human life are meaningless. So what do you think the Rocky Horror Picture Show means?
Wow, you're asking a big question about meaning in a dark time.
Let's get existential on here.
Yeah.
So, I'm a person that takes solace in nothing mattering, like that my fuck-ups can have no longer-term impact. And I've been, like, asked this question before, and I hate to be a fucking, shit poster about it, but truly Rocky is about be gay, do crime. Like,
yes.
And it's not consequential. Fucking have, things to be said, like, Frank is definitely a villain. Let's not get it twisted. He is actively a terrible person, but also, like, be gay, do crime. I mean, like, we've always, across history, loved a crime lord with flair. Like, if you do it in 6-inch heels and glitter, like, no one's gonna be mad at you about it. Everyone's just gonna be too distracted.
Notes to Donald J. Trump. These might be helpful for you right now. I don't know if you've considered makeup that's better or heels
Dear 45,
that are better.
Wear heels.
And
and
maybe if you...
There needs to be a contour, and there needs to be a distinct tailoring of the suit.
Look, all I'm saying, if they did the coup in Rocky Horror outfits, maybe we wouldn't care as much. I don't know.
Can you imagine Pence and those little pointy-toe booties that Riff and Magenta wear?
He is a riff. Hold on.
With,
gotta
like...
head cast the people I hate.
With how one of our riffs, who is bald, has a sculpted ponytail with a suction cup that he puts on for takeover.
Suction cup.
And so I'm like imagining that on Mike Pence's bald spot.
Suction cup. What a brilliant
Suction
idea.
cup.
You gotta have a really specifically shaped head for that.
You do.
Indeed.
All right, Abby.
Sorry, I can't get enough of
You've
that.
had
That's
time to
adorable.
think.
Sure have. We'll say there's about 2 brain cells happening. I think I agree that there is a comfort in the nothingness. But to me, Rocky Horror is about community ultimately. The movie is very secondary when it comes down to it, but I think that because it's so wild, the movie itself rather is so wild and so up to interpretation that going back to a nothingness leaves it as a more open space for others to get what they need from it.
It's fair.
Yes.
It's fair. Love it.
So before we wrap everything up, we're going to give you guys a couple minutes to plug your personal social medias, your Sins of the Flesh social medias, anything you want to plug.
Where we
Go
should
for
find
it.
you, what we should
Oh
look
my
at.
gosh.
Well, Sins of the Flesh is on some social media. We do have a Facebook. That's where you can find all of our photos from shows. So if you would like if you think that I took a picture of you at a show, it's probably there. If it is
audience
not, it
pictures
wasn't
are
cute
usually
enough.
to the
Sorry.
front.
Yes, the audience pictures are usually to the front. If you think that I might have taken a picture of you and it's not there, please feel free to message us. I will try and find it. Sins is on Instagram. I run it. If you message us and you get a snarky reply, it's probably me.
If you get an overly wordy reply, it's probably me, because it's literally Abby and I are the 2 people logged in. We are also Sins O the Flesh on Instagram, all one word. We save the F for you.
Classic.
Oh, classic.
I personally do a lot of outfit and my makeup and costuming bullshit on my social media. I am awesomely fresh. That is all one word, all lowercase. I'm also tagged in every 4th photo on this Instagram because I play too many characters.
And you're also tagged a lot on our page, so.
Thank you. I
We love to
appreciate
see
it.
it.
I'm an attention whore. It's okay.
Spoken like a true Frank.
Yes, exactly. My social is at Abby Mahler Photo on Instagram or at Pinball Witch with 2 eyes. It's a war zone out there right now, folks. You better be in for some politics if you want to follow my personal.
If you're having a cool, safe wedding or little photo shoot engagement event, please hire Abby because she's gonna make you look so pretty.
I
And
am Austin's Instagram boyfriend, so this is coming from
she is my
someone's
Instagram
knowledge.
boyfriend. That's pretty much, if it's not obviously a selfie, 98% chance it was taken by Abby.
Yeah. And I'm at Babzone on Twitter. If you again want some spicy political takes, it's been a long pandemic.
We just recently joined Twitter. We were late to the game. It's fine.
Also,
Same.
if you generally have Sins casting performing questions, we don't exist right now, but if you have general when we exist questions and you message Sins the Flesh on Instagram, it is gonna be me, the cast lead, answering. So please feel free. That is my job, is to answer questions.
No better time than the present to work on your entire costume and then be ready
Yes.
for when we come back.
Yes,
And
I agree.
always analretentiverockyhorror.com. Always.
Hell
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Linked in our blog many a time.
Oh yes.
Well, thank you folks so much for taking the time out of your busy pandemic days to talk to us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. This was such a treat. Would love to see you in corporeal form at some point.
Yes, please.
Thanks again to Austin and Abby from Sins of the Flesh for chatting with us. We hope you enjoyed this special bonus episode. And don't forget, on Wednesdays we watch Rocky. Bye!
Bye.
Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps us out, and we appreciate all your feedback. We'll see you next time.